Hi, this is Renee Austin on Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
I just wanna be sitting at your feet, singing you a song in the spirit that's so sweet.
Alrighty, well firstly, congratulations on the new album and your return to music.
Thank you. It has been a long journey, so it was nice to finally have something new to, having music.
It certainly has been a journey. The last time we spoke, you had just put out an open letter to your fans announcing that you weren't able to sing anymore. That must have been obviously a difficult moment. At that time, did you see that letter as something that gave you a sense of closure? A moment in time where you could draw the line and say, now it's time to move on?
Yeah, I mean, we had been through, at that point, it had been 4 months since the surgery, and they didn't even know for the first 2 to 4 weeks. They just kept saying, they told me at the surgery when I said, I can't talk very well, and they said, oh, that's just the swelling from the surgery. You'll be up and out in 2 weeks. So we were supposed to be touring Europe. I was supposed to be on tour with Delbert McClinton. CMT was looking at my video for airplay. There was all these things that were just rolling along, and I was so grateful that that it wasn't cancer, and that was the big relief, because they had tried testing me for the whole summer while we were making Right About Love. I didn't tell anybody because there was nothing to tell, but they were testing me the whole summer we were working on the record. And so, waking up cancer-free was obviously the great relief. And then they said, in 2 weeks or so, you should have everything will be back and you'll be up running and back out on the road. And 2 weeks turned into 4, 4 turned into 6, 8 to 12. And, I can't swallow right. I can't breathe right. I can't talk above a whisper. So we went back in, and they can't figure out, they're trying to figure out what the problem is. They give me to a voice therapist to, have me work on voice stuff for a few sessions. Didn't make a difference. And, they put scopes down, and that's when they just discovered that the left vocal nerve had been paralyzed. So at the point when the letter came out, which was, the record got released before the surgery. The record got released in I think it's like the 16th of August, and then the surgery was in September, early September. And so, we had all these things planned and all these things going. So by the time I wrote the letter, it had been 4 months or so since the surgery. And basically they had just said, look, there's nothing we can do for you. We don't know why, you have a paralyzed vocal nerve. We don't see any damage or cuts or nicks or scratches on your vocal nerve, but it's just stopped working. So, by the time the letter came out, that was just after the final doctor's, consultation, the surgeon saying, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And my surgeon is a great lady. She cried when she knew, that the voice was gone, and we're friends to this day. So, we made good friends. And she's actually the same doctor. If you see the little documentary that we made, the mini documentary on the website, that's my surgeon who did the surgery, going back down with scopes, last year and saying, hey, they're, wow, they're working. So it was pretty neat to have her see that and be a part of it. I think she was really grateful for the miracle of it, and we're friends to this day. So
what you lost though at the time was the tool of your trade. How long did it take you to deal with what to do with the next phase of your life?
Oh my gosh. Well, when we got after the 4 months, we sort of had to at that point, you reevaluate, because you know that they're saying, look, we don't have anything, we can't do anything more for you. So at that point, yeah, there was no income. There was a brand new record that was just sitting on, we couldn't tour. I couldn't do anything. So the record just sat, and, CMT, I couldn't follow up with, I couldn't tour, so they were not going to play the video, so there was a lot of, couldn't tour with Delbert, in general, couldn't do anything. So a lot of the doors that had opened, closed. And obviously I couldn't speak. What happened in the surgery too, that a lot of folks didn't know, was that the thyroid lays on your two vocal nerves, and so when the lump they found was in my thyroid. So when they removed half the thyroid to check for cancer, that's the left nerve that got paralyzed, the left side. But that nerve does three jobs. It does your swallowing. It holds the thyroid. I mean, it lays on top of it, but it does your swallowing, and it moves your vocal nerves, and it lifts your chest cavity to breathe on both sides. So when I got paralyzed during the surgery, all of those items went down for me. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't. My left side wouldn't lift up. My left chest cavity. So I could walk a flight of stairs. It was like I'd ran a marathon. I couldn't get air because of the swallowing aspect. I could swallow or take a, just like be talking and swallow, and it would send my throat into a spasm and shut off the air in my throat. And the only way I could breathe was through my nose, and it would be like it sounded like you were choking me. Like I couldn't, and the first time it happened to be at my friend, a nurse's office when it happened. And she grabbed my hands and she's like, look at me. Like she totally knew, we didn't know what was happening, but we knew it wasn't good. I couldn't breathe. And, so it took about 35, 40 seconds of trying to get air in, and I couldn't get air. So once, when that happened, they sent me to the ER that day, and the guy just said, well, obviously you have a paralyzed nerve, so whatever is happening when you swallow, you're having these spasms. He said, the worst thing that could happen is you're going to pass out. I'm like, let's backtrack. I was at work. I worked at a rehab facility. It was women trying to get clean, and I'm driving 15 women around in a van, or my anybody. I mean, I could be driving and you're telling me I could pass out if it happens, because it's a sporadic thing, it wasn't like it was planned. You're just going to pass out. And I said, I can't do that. I can't just pass out, in my life. So he goes, well, there's really nothing you can do except make sure, at the time I had a cold. So part of the reason I couldn't get much air was my nose was stuffed up, which made it worse. So he just said, just make sure you use something that keeps your nasal passages open, even if you have to use this stuff, that's a 3-day opener or whatever, because, that's what'll happen. You'll wake up, you'll pass out, but your throat will relax and you'll be able to breathe. But, okay, great. Who wants to pass out suddenly, So that was a little scary. And, so I had to start using some stuff to keep went to an allergy doctor to try to figure out if I had allergies, and if so, just to try to keep stuff from affecting my sinuses and stuff. So there was a whole lot going on that wasn't in the public eye that we just didn't go into. But at that point, right, you can't, I was hoping to work, when, and so, but when that first happened at the very beginning, at that point, I didn't even know if I'd get a job. And so, I could do this. I'm going to whisper. I mean, that was it. So you couldn't hear me across the counter. I'd say something to the girl at the checkout counter, and she couldn't hear me. I'd have to tap on the counter and tell her to look at me. Like, you couldn't hear me at Thanksgiving. I could be talking to you as loud as I could, but everybody's talking at the same time. There's so much noise, and you couldn't hear me. So it became very isolating for me. It was like being mute, except with just a titch of whisper that you could hear if you had no TV or radio or no noise, you could hear me. So yeah, there was a lot going on. There was, just the pulled out from society, being able to just interact as a person, and then how am I going to get a job where I can't speak? Nobody knew sign language. I knew some sign language. Nobody I knew couldn't sign. So you end up writing on a pad of paper or a dry eraser board, and I couldn't sing, obviously, because I can't even speak. And so our livelihood was, dramatically cut at that point. And it was some scary times there, but God was good, and I got this job before I ever had like that spasm moment, but that was kind of a little bit later, because what folks don't know is that when I got the speaking voice back, I was still paralyzed. I was still couldn't swallow. I still couldn't breathe right. Like, the only thing, instead of the nerve work, it wasn't like the nerve just started working. The nerve was still paralyzed, and yet I could speak. So it was really amazing when I got the speaking voice back, because all the other issues were still there.
Yeah.
And I happened to get a job for a little nonprofit that rebuilds villages in Kenya and Uganda. So it's like a social outreach group. Well, there aren't any phones in the village, so nobody was calling me. I didn't have to talk on the phone much. And if they worked with us, if they were a volunteer, they knew that I whispered. So they just listened and tuned in real careful when they called, for or needed anything. So, but yeah, it was crazy. You lose, and I didn't get that for probably 5 months after the surgery. I didn't get a job. So, there was, no income change. And, it's so interesting now because people do benefits for people all the time. We're going to have a concert and help this person out or that person out.
Yeah.
But because I'm more of a private person, I put out the letter and then I just tried to live my life. People still said, like, when they heard that I could sing again, they were like, we didn't know what happened to you. It's like you just dropped out. People just didn't know. Like, they said they didn't know that I'd lost the voice. So there was no extra help or fundraisers or benefit, concerts to help us. We just lost all the income, and, until the doors opened for me to get a job. So yeah, it had some pretty scary moments there at the beginning, like how we're going to make ends meet, pay the bills, but I couldn't speak. So there wasn't any job you could just walk into, even at McDonald's I couldn't work at because you couldn't hear me,
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
So what was your relationship to music during those years? Did it take away your enjoyment of music as a listener? Was it frustrating for you to listen to other people sing or go to gigs?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't write any songs. I didn't play the piano. I'm more of a piano player than I am a guitar player. But I didn't pick up the guitar either. Music in general was painful. It was a painful subject and painful to be around because I couldn't sing in the shower. I couldn't sing in the car. To the radio, a song would come on. You can't sing. So It's sort of like being a quarterback. The way I liken to it was like being a quarterback who has his arm cut off, or he gets paralyzed and his throwing arm is over, and they want you to, aren't you going to come to the game? No. Yeah. It's too hard to watch, it's too hard to hear it and know everybody, or hear a song that your whole life you maybe sang along to and now you can't. And music at that point, in my life. You know, that was part of my identity. It was who I was. I was Renee the singer, Renee the songwriter, Renee the performer, artist, you know, all the labels that people give people in the industry. But, you know, I had to learn who I was without music. I had to learn that music was something I did. It's not who I am. And that was a hard lesson to learn.
Sure.
It took a while because I loved it so much, and it was the one place where I received encouragement and attention from people and positive feedback. You know, I grew up in a kind of a hard house. There was addiction and violence and stuff in the house that I grew up in, and so there wasn't a lot of encouragement and building up. And so music was the one place where somebody would go, "Wow, great job, Renee." You know, and it was like, okay, you know, I'm good at this and people notice me, you know. So when that was gone, I'm like, now what? Now who am I? What do I have? What do I have to offer? And again, you know, God was so good with that. You know, you know, it was that lesson of learning that I mattered to him just because I was breathing, not because I was a singer. You know, he gave me that gift, but it wasn't who I was. It was just a part of who I was, you know. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
It was something I did. And that didn't make me special. Even though, you know, in my whole life I thought that's what made me special. When you don't have it anymore, you realize, okay, I am, you know, you have to learn that you matter and you have purpose and destiny, and that if it's not music, you know, I love the girl that has that movie out where she got, you know, she's been surfer and she gets her arm bit off, you know, by the shark.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Again, Soul Surfer, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that because you're like, I'm not going out again. And for her too, you know, physically, like me, it was impossible, you know. But I just love that. I could totally relate to her because surfing is what she did. It was her hobby. It was her entertainment. It was her job. You know, she was competing, you know. Music had been all those things. It was my job. It was my hobby. And so there was a very big learning curve to figure out who I was without the music, and to realize that I had more to offer, you know, that I had other gifts and skills, and people still loved me even if I couldn't sing. That didn't make me lovable, you know. And you know what I mean? The people that mattered, they still loved me. It wasn't my husband still loved me, you know. So but it was a very big learning curve for me to realize that, okay, it's just something I do. It's not the end of me, and I can still go out and make a difference. And I think that's why my first job that I took was helping the villages in Africa, because in my heart, you know, I'm always the kind of person that wants to make a difference in the world, make the world a better place, better than I left. You know, when I leave, I want to leave it a better place, you know. And that job just really, I found it on the back of a little tiny newspaper. It was like a community newspaper, and I picked it up for some reason out of the rack, and this little tiny ad, you know, maybe an inch and a half long, but they wanted somebody with like their master's degree in, you know, so, you know, social working in another country. Like there's degrees in all this stuff, and I'm a musician, and so I go in for the interview. I can't even talk. I can whisper. And they had me back, and I couldn't believe I made this interview. I'm like, okay. And then, and we get back, and we're in the next interview, and we talk again, and then they have me back for a third one, and I'm blown away by this point. Of course, on the third one, they tell me that they want to hire me, but they said, you know, there's just something about you. She said, the woman that was the director, and she said, we have candidates who have their master's degrees in, you know, going into third world countries and doing, you know, this kind of work, and we want you. Like, what? Like, my head was like spinning, because I'm like, I don't have that background at all. She said, there's just something about you. You're the one. And I was just like, well, all right then. You just start to get people who start to believe in you for other things,
Yeah.
and that was a huge thing for me. And I'm always grateful to Give Us Wings was the name of it's still around. The director's now retired. And other people are, she hired somebody to take over as the executive director, but it was a huge step for me. And that was before I got the voice back. She hired me at a whisper, and it was at her office, at the office there, where I went to work and couldn't speak, hung my coat up, sat down, was working on paper, and the telephone rang, and I just went, "Good morning," and my voice on the spot, like, just showed up one morning.
Wow.
10 months into the after the surgery, 9-10 months. It was at Give Us Wings, yeah. John, it was weird. I'm like, do you hear that? The person on the other line is going, excuse me? Like, I'm going to have to call you back, right? I'm like, oh my God, I can talk. Like, and so immediately I try to sing. I can't sing at all. It's like, it was horrid. But I could completely speak. Like, it was such a miracle thing, Couldn't swallow right, couldn't sing, couldn't breathe right, but the speaking voice just started.
Wow.
So it was a great moment. It was a miracle moment. So, but I could not sing. So, I didn't just jump into the van and, go, all right, I'm back, It took a while for those prayers to get answered, It took 2 years until the next step of the voice, and then another 2 years past that before and both times on the spot. So all 3 times it was on the spot moments. There was no, I gradually worked it up. It got stronger. There was nope, couldn't do it, could do it. Nope, I can't sing at all. Yes, you can, but it wasn't my full voice. And then 2 years later, I can't sing that song in that key. That's my old voice. And on the spot, it came back.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing journey.
That is a miracle. It really is.
Yeah, all 3 were total miracles, and
yeah,
I'm grateful. But it's been interesting, I have people who don't believe me. They're like, we don't believe you. But you got a miracle. I'm like, hey, well, God bless you, whatever, If you don't want to believe, you're not going to believe, but I just know because I was there. I was kind of there when it happened, so I know it was a miracle, and the doctors couldn't explain it either, and so it's one of those things that people it's hard for them sometimes to reach out. I've had people go, "You just wished it back," and I'm like, "I wished it back from day one."
Yeah, of course.
It took 5 years, between the first, the surgery and the final miracle, the third one. It took 5 years of there was no wishing anything back. I wished it back from day one, and it was just paralyzed. That was it, it was dead, it was a dead nerve. So it was, but it's working now. So we have proof of that. So that's
sure
awesome.
do. Recorded proof.
Yeah.
And let's talk about this wonderful new record. Through the years, were you always in the back of your mind thinking the type of record you would like to make if the miracle did happen?
Yeah, I knew that this record, it's interesting because, this is totally a gospel record, but yet it's still about life, and it's about being, it's about love. It's about, I'm grateful to what God did for me, so that's on there. But it's also about his love for people, that's on there too. And it's been getting interesting response because of that. It's almost like people, I remember as a kid, I loved Aretha, and Aretha would come out with gospel records, and nobody had a problem with that.
Mm.
But this record's getting some interesting feedback. People love it, or they're like, "Oh, it's too Christian." I'm like, "That's what gospel music is." Like, it's like Mavis Staples, even Aretha did her gospel. She's like 3 or 4 gospel records, right? I mean, it's not like it wasn't. I still sing about life. I still sing about, love. I still sing about those things. But this record was just, these are the songs that I knew were supposed to be selected. And so it's good that I'm different now, and in that I don't depend on what people think or feel about the music for me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of musicians, especially again in the house that I grew up in, I was an insecure kid, and that's partly why the music was so important for me, because it had become an identity thing for me. So, but when it was gone, and I learned that, okay, I matter. I'm okay. I'm an okay person, even if you don't think so, right? Because before I was so dependent on, will you like my record? Because if you don't love it, what did I do wrong? Why don't you like it? What's wrong with me? It was a very hard thing for me, very insecure. And that wasn't in the public eye, but that's what was happening for me at home, in the confines of my own head, Well, why did you book them? Why didn't you book me? I mean, there was such insecurity that I had to, the losing the voice really just put the spotlight right on that and helped me to deal with that, So the old me would be sad if somebody, well, I don't really like your record, I'd be like devastated. Now I'm like, well, hey, that's okay. You still love me. Oh yeah. I mean, I've gotten different responses from people who absolutely love it, and others who, so what do you think of the record? Well, and that's just like 9-minute pause. Well, it's different. Oh, okay. He goes, you're not blues. I'm like, I never really was pure blues. You know that, and
Yeah.
well, yeah, I know that, but you're not roots anymore. I'm like, soul and R&B and gospel are as roots as it gets. Like, that is roots music, gospel especially. Gospel was, has been around longer, whatever. But before that would have been really hard for me. And now it's like, well, hey, that's all right. I'm glad you told me how you feel. And because I feel good about that I made the record I was supposed to make, so I'm really happy with the record. We worked really hard on it. It's got some amazing players, and it's the first time I executive produced myself, so that was a new hat to wear. And then I went out and hired guys to co-produce with me. And this is also the first record where I wrote every song alone, no co-writers. I mean, I had some of the songs on the other records were written by me, but when the producer changes a word, he gets 50%. So you have to but this is the first time where nobody it's just me.
Yeah.
So that was fun to have that just in house.
It's certainly a gospel album, but I don't find it gospel in a preachy kind of way at all. I don't feel like I'm being preached to.
I don't think so either.
No.
Yeah, and it wasn't intended to do that. It's totally, for me, it's a love letter to God, because I've known him since I was a kid. I've loved Jesus, I really, literally since I was little. I mean, I in all the chaos that was going on in our house, for some reason, my folks would bring me to church, which is weird because they weren't really living it. They weren't doing anything in a godly sort of way, in the way they lived in the house, but they would bring me to church. And I just knew Jesus was for real, and fell in love with him. And I'd be dead right now without him. There's just so much stuff that I could have done wrong with the house that I grew up with, and how life could have gone for me. And I talk to him every day, and he talks back, and he's alive and well, and I know it. And I think this record was just the whole point was, part of the reason he gave me the voice back was he wanted people to know that they have a misconception of him, you know, like he's mad, he's angry, he's whatever. And this record is really about his love and how much he loves us, and how much we matter to him, you know, and that doesn't get talked about a lot of times in some churches, you know. And so my heart for the record was that the songs, really, people are just, everybody's got something that they're hurting, you know, maybe their marriage is falling apart, or they're dealing with some illness, or I've had all these different things. People have come up to me after shows now, and they just start telling me they're hurt, you know, because they need a miracle in something. And I just keep encouraging them, like, hey, you know, don't give it up, because, you know, God's in the business of doing miracles. He never stopped, and he loves you. And, you know, I know miracles still happen because I am one. Mm-hmm. So that seems to be the repeat response during the show, you know, after the show is over. And people will say, you know, wow, you surprised me how much you're open about, you know, your faith. And like, well, and again, it's not preachy. What I just said to you is all I say. You know, it's not like it's a 10, 20 minute, let's have a Bible study here moment, you know, but it's just that simple. God loves you, he's for real, and miracles still happen. You know, that's really literally, I mean, I talk for less than a minute, and that's telling the story, you know, with that. So yeah, it was never intended to be preachy, because and the hope is that it will bring people hope, you know, to and we've seen some amazing things. Like, I'm not kidding. We've prayed for people at shows, and God's healed them, just like I got healed on the spot. You know, he does what he does. He's been like that, you know, forever. Just, I think people don't, either A, they don't believe in him, two, they believe in him, but they're not sure he really does that kind of stuff. And so they don't ask, you know. And so it's been pretty cool to see him do for others what he did for me, you know, at some of the shows, and change lives, you know. That's what it's for. It's just to go, hey, you know, you're so loved, and God can heal you. Give him a chance, you know. If you haven't asked him, you know, ask him. So, you know, that's kind of the gist of the record for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Listening to the record, your voice sounds as good as ever. You know your voice better than anybody. Have you noticed any slight differences in your singing voice since its return?
Yes, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. There's a couple of the highest high notes that are not there. At least not yet. I keep asking the Lord, like, bring them back, because I liked them. I like those notes. Bring them back. That's a little different. Also, there's a difference in also I still have a husky. I mean, I talk husky, and when I sing, there's a husky element, an airy thing. That's why, you know, people are like, oh yeah, kind of like Michael McDonald, or, you know, more of the, like Anita Baker, you know, some of the more just chestier voice people, you know. But I've noticed that I can do more with my voice in the R&B setting, where I could do some chops, but I can do more things. Like, my voice will just roll into notes and in and out and do things that I wasn't able to do like that before. So it's got a little bit of a limit on some of the high notes, but it will actually do more. One of the producers, Douglas Smith, he had been on tour with me the year we were making Right About Love. He was on a break. He had been in P-Funk. He had been with Nika Costa, and he was with Van Hunt, who's a big R&B guy. So he was on a break and was living in Minneapolis for a while, and God just threw us together, and we're like, he is family in our family. We're just family. And when I went, we drove, my husband and my son Gabriel, we all drove to New York to work on some demos, when I was like, I think we should record some stuff, you know. And so we drove out to New York as a family and hit Niagara Falls, tried to make it a fun thing. And this was 2 years ago, and or maybe 3 now. No, 2, because we started the record a year ago. And he goes, wow, your voice has this new rubber band quality. He goes, you just move in and out of notes effortlessly, which you couldn't do before. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's fun. So that kind of, I think, showed up on the record. Not having to sing hard too was a bigger thing for me for the record from the very beginning, even from dancing with having different producers. They all wanted me to sing at the top of my range because they're like, oh, it's more energy, it's more powerful. Well, trying to do that live every night was hard. I couldn't talk, the next day because I couldn't speak. My voice was worn out. And so this time around, I was like, okay, here's the top of my range, but I don't need to sing at it the entire time. I'll still hit the notes, but I don't have to be up there in the rafters because I want to be able to sing, for sometimes, a set maybe 60 minutes or it might be 275. It's about longevity for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show more, and the other ones were about, okay, belt it out. And I think with the new voice, it's become more fun for me not to belt, but to actually sing, more like some of my vocal heroes, again, like Regina Bell or Ella Fitzgerald or even Tina Turner. You can name them off, whatever, but they're not belters, they're singers. And I think that's one thing that I've changed. I've settled into being a singer, not a belter. And I like my new space a lot more. I feel like I can communicate the song better. I also can wake up and sing the next day without trouble,
Yeah.
And I like that. So and I just think it communicates the new music that I've written. It's just, I think, again, before I lost the voice, I wasn't really for sure who I was. My first record, I totally loved Stevie and Jimmy Vaughan. So my first record, I was like, well, I'll just make music like them. So then I wrote all these songs that sound like them. And, but it wasn't really me, it was me loving them.
Yeah.
And then the next records with Blind Pig came out, and I wrote these songs that are more like what you hear on the record. But they're like, no, that's not us. We're a blues label. And the producer for those records was way more Stonesy in his delivery. Mm-hmm. So then everything came out kind of Stonesy. I don't own one Stones record, like not one. It's not me. He picked songs that I look back and like, I would never record that again. I wrote it, but I would never record that again. And because again, I was like, okay, whatever you want me to do. I was so afraid to just speak up for myself, afraid to make somebody mad or whatever. And when that got healed in me, for this record, I was okay. I knew this is what I want. This is the sound I'm after. One of the producers was like, well, it's funny. Every single one of them said, this is very outside the box. Everybody used that term. All these songs are very outside the box. They're hard to categorize. My own husband said it about the artwork. Gee, this artwork's really outside the box. I'm like, every one of them used that term with me, right? The old me would have been like, okay, what do I need to do? Conform, okay. Yeah. This time, it was really freeing for me to say, nope, that's the picture I got in my mind of the cover. That's it. That's it. That's the cover. I'm not changing it. And these songs, one of the guys wanted to chop it up. He couldn't wrap his brain around the way I'd written it. In fact, it's The Roses Are Crying, it gets great crowd response right now. It's funny. That's one of, especially in Texas, they went nuts on it. But that song was kind of tough, and so he's like, well, I kind of rewrote it. You want to hear what it sounds like? And this is a guy that's written for some great people. And I was like, I listened. I'm like, nope, that's not it. And so I had to put on my big girl pants and go, I really appreciate you doing that, but this is the song and this is how it's going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to produce this song, I can have one of the other guys work on it with me. I don't want you to do anything you're not comfortable with. And he went away, and 20 minutes later, he's like, no, you know what? It's fine. It's good. It's really a good song. And then he just changed, And so I just felt each one of those songs were exactly how they were supposed to be done. And I had heard like the finished product before they were recorded. I just knew this is what the end sounds like. And when it came to that point, that's when it was like, okay, it's done. And so that was really great for me. And the songwriter people that have all heard it, they love they love it. It's just the folks I think that are more blues purists.
Yeah.
They're having a hard time with it, and because it's gospel, some people, and there's nothing I can do about that. I'm sure those people didn't buy Aretha's gospel record either.
Mm-hmm.
Will I make another gospel record next? I don't know. I just kind of we'll see what comes. And I'm writing songs all the time though now, so they're about life and love and all kinds of stuff. So I've thought of a lot of different things. Maybe do a tribute album to somebody else's songs. Just I don't know. I'm just so excited to sing. I just want to be creative with what comes next. But I love this record. I feel like this record is even if nobody liked it but me, I feel okay with that because I know it was me. It's all me, and it's my songs that I write. And the label just wouldn't let me release that stuff. Things that had more of a little rock bent or, more of the R&B thing. And they're like for a blues label or the singer-songwriter stuff, just me and the piano, like on Butterfly. They would have never let me put that out. But, and I played the piano on that one for the first time. It was the first time that I was kind of intimidated after all the great piano guys I've had on the record, in the past. And the producers, one of the guys was like, look, this is your song. And he's like, nobody can play it. They've all tried. Nobody can do it like you. You need to do this. And I was like, oh. So again, put on the big girl pants and went into the studio, and it felt good. So now I'm playing it, playing piano more on a song or two in the middle of the show, just me and the piano, a little more singer-songwriter moment, and I'm getting braver at it, just I can always be the hardest on myself, So yeah, it's been a big, it's been very life-changing in a lot of ways for me, musically and just in my heart and in my soul, just a lot more at home, just liking me, which is a good thing. I think it's going to make me a better artist by not worrying about what other people say,
Now, Douglas Smith, apart from being involved in production, also joins you on the track Destiny. Did you write that song with a duet in mind, or was that something just evolved in the studio?
No, it happened before the studio. We had I'd written it. That song in itself. Talk about another miracle. I'm telling you, John, like these miracles are lining up because even the record itself was a miracle. I didn't have any money, and a guy called and said, "Hey, I was praying, and God told me I'm supposed to give you and invest all the money for your CD." What? Like, even the record's a miracle. I mean, just crazy. So this song, Destiny, 2 years ago, 2 years ago, this last summer, so 2 years ago, so 2016, I was asked to sing at a conference, and I just one song. It was the special music for this conference, and this one song, and I was like, gosh, I don't know what to pick. So I started digging through, songs that, I obviously hadn't recorded yet. And I come across this piece of paper, and it's Destiny. And I'm looking at the the lines, the words or whatever, and I just pull it out and I sit down at the piano, and this music just comes, like just the melody came, and the music to it, and then a couple of days later, I get the bridge. About there's nothing you can do to run from his love, kind of thing, and so now it's a few days before I have to actually, it's about a week out from the actual conference, and I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to pick. So I start flipping through, and I have and what's weird, I look down at Destiny again as I'm flipping through the pile, and I realized that I wrote this song about having destiny when I didn't have my voice. Like, I wrote the lyrics when I couldn't sing or speak, if that's not crazy, about having destiny. And it had sat in the pile that many years, just sat there, not touched, until the conference. And then I get this, get the music for it. And I'm like, well, all right, Lord, I always check in. Like, what do you think? What do you want me to, what does this group need to hear? Which song do you want to bless them with or whatever, And I'm flipping through, and I actually touch the paper for Destiny, and I get like tingles from the top of my head to my toes, just like electrical current. I'm like, oh, okay, that one. It's like, okay. I'm like, okay, I gotcha. I hear you. All right, that's the one. But as soon as I pull it out, I'm like, oh no, what if they don't like it? What if the lady, it's about a girl standing on the street corner, and it's a dude in the back of a police car. My head is just fighting this thing, and I'm sure other forces were fighting me to not do this song too. But it was like, no, I know you said this one. You zapped me. Like, I knew the Lord just zapped me on it. So we get it to the conference, and even that was tough. Every time I'd go to practice with the band to do it for the 2 days before, the leader would come up and go, I need the band back. Like 2 minutes in, we couldn't get the song practice. Every time the band leader for the conference would come back in and take the team away. And so I'm like, all right, so we're going to pull this song out tomorrow with not one rehearsal, right? Not one. And I'm like, all right, here's the chart. Just follow me. And I do the song, and people are crying all over the room, like just emotional. And the main speaker for the conference, she just starts talking to everybody about how important it is that God gives everybody destiny, and she's like, if and this may seem like an odd thing, but it was a Christian conference, but she just said, if you really, like, you believe you have destiny but you don't know what it is, let's all gather together and let's just pray for each other. 2/3 of the room got up, and there were close to 1,000 people in there, and 2/3 of the room got up to pray because they kind of felt like they had destiny but didn't know what they were supposed to do, And it was crazy. And so I come around the corner and I see all these people, because you had to walk back and around this back part of the wall to get back around to the sanctuary part. And there's all these people up at the front. I'm like, what's that about? Like, I had no idea, because I couldn't hear what was going on as I'm walking through the back hall, And so then everybody sits down, and the people that were running the conference are making some announcements and stuff, and up gets the main speaker from the front row. I'm off to the left in another section, and I think she's going to the bathroom. I think she's like passing to go down the aisle, and she stops at my chair and leans down and squats on the floor by me. She's 6 feet tall, so she's hard to miss. She's from Canada, eh? White blonde hair, blue eyes, talks with that Canadian accent. And she said, that song is so powerful. She's like, would you come to they have a world conference, which is like 2,000 people. They bring people from all over the world in Phoenix, Arizona. Would you come and do that song for for the world conference. And I'm just like, okay, like I've never sang it before, right? But that song gets that response every time, like we play it. So when it came time to actually record it, I was just going to do me. And then I started to get the visual ask, because I was like, we need to make a video, which we haven't done yet. We haven't had the budget yet to do it. But, it was the guy and the girl, it's two. And I was just like, maybe I should have a guy I felt like, the guy do the second verse.
Okay.
And at first, I was going to talk to my friend. I don't know, do you know who Malford Milligan is? He was in the band Storyville.
Oh, yes, yep.
Yeah, and we wrote, he and I and Tom Shannon from Double Trouble, we wrote the song Write About Love together for that last album before I lost the voice. And so we'd stayed friends and connected, via social media when it came out and stuff. And I was going to ask him if he wanted to do it, because we recorded 4 of the songs in Texas with David Grissom, and he couldn't. He wasn't able to do it. And so I was like, well, okay. And then it just became obvious it was Doug. So, and it was perfect. Doug's he was the guy. He was the right guy. And so it became, and seemingly enough, Doug lived that very thing in his young life, being in the back of the police car. And literally he said, I said the words, "It's over. My life is over," just like in the verse. Right. And so he and I both, it was just the perfect. We both knew, it was just the right. And it didn't matter that it wasn't a well-known name for me. It was just having the right person,
the right person,
and I mean, like saying he was in P-Funk. I mean, the guy, he's incredibly talented, and, Van Hunt and a bunch of these R&B groups, but now he's a pastor in New York, and he's doing his destiny, what he really feels like he's meant to do. So, which is loving people, so, that was, I love having duets. I try to have one on every record, but on Write About Love, Tommy Castro was going to sing with me, and then something happened in his tour schedule and he couldn't make it, and we were past the time, we couldn't wait anymore. So we just made it, a just me kind of a record. But even the thing with Delbert, that was so cool. That wasn't intended to be a duet either. And, my husband had a dream. He's like, I had a dream and that song was a duet. And I was like, again, the whole lightning bolt thing. You're like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's got you. I went, because I was listening in my head. I'm like, oh, and so it was another one of those great little God moments, So, I like duets. I do. I like them a lot. So I'm glad I got to do another one.
And the songs that you recorded in Austin with David Grissom, were they songs that you specifically earmarked for David's treatment, or are they just...
Not, well, a little bit, not for David specifically. There were, before I talked to David about producing, we had written a song together for Write About Love too, Mouth of the Delta, which is the kickoff tune for that record. And I had contacted him a couple of years ago when we were working at the demo stage with Douglas, and said, hey, I'm thinking about trying to record. Do you have some time to write? And he's like, I don't have it right now, but check with me, in a few months. Right now I'm just swamped. So, it just didn't, the timing wasn't right. But what was great about these songs, Chris First, who owns Studio 65, where we recorded here in town, here in the cities, he owned the studio, and he brings a real, very cool pop sense to things. He's got a really good pop mind. And I'm not afraid anymore of the word pop. Like if you use that word in a blues setting, you know, they might lynch you. But in music, it's always the songs that are real catchy and hooky. That, you know, that's a pop sense. It's just very hooky, and you know, it's not a cuss word. It's a good thing, you know. So I wanted that element in the songs, because a lot of what I write is repetition, which gets people singing. You know, they sing along and they like that. They don't have to think hard about the song or try to remember the lyrics, you know. So what was really cool was we had all these songs. I had picked probably 25, 30 songs that we pulled together and said, okay, I think these have all potential to be on the record. And so between Douglas and Chris and my husband and I, we all happened to be believers, and we all went away, each of us, and we prayed and went, all right, Lord, it's your record. You know, look, you brought the money, you healed my voice. This is your thing. You know, what songs? And all four of us picked 9 out of the 11 that were on the record. Without talking to each other. Right? It's just too much. Like, people will not believe me, but I'm telling, like, this is how it went down, you know. So we just knew those were the songs, but there were these 4 that didn't have that gospel, soul, R&B, almost Minneapolis to an extent flavor, and but they were still me, you know. And I felt like they had this Texas thing, but not a country deal, but a Grissom. I mean, if you know David Grissom's music, you know he's toured with. He was in Mellencamp. Joe Ely is the music director for the Dixie Chicks. He's very broad spectrum, but he's a rock guy. And I was just like, all right, same thing. Went to the big head honcho, and said, I don't know who for these 4 songs. Chris and Douglas, they're not the guys to work with this with me. And clear as a bell, David Grissom. So I called, and he's like, yeah, I would love to, and I'm available. So it happened quite quickly. And his songs, out of the four that we did in Austin, we did them down in Austin, and which is an hour from where I grew up, you know. So I love Austin, and my sister now lives there. My pop is in the nursing home there, and so I had family there too. And we started working on these songs, and when we got done, you know, we just recorded we didn't really have a scratch because I had gotten laryngitis before the trip, so I had no scratch vocal for them to use in Texas. They just played the music, you know, from the chart. And the music was so beautiful for me and so outside the box of anything. You know, they just took my song and did this, you know, just brought it to life. And it was so beautiful. I almost fought having just instrumental on the record. They were, especially In Your Wake. That song is so beautiful without me singing on it. I literally almost didn't do it. I almost didn't sing over it. And David's guitar gifting is part of that. Like he makes his guitar sing like a person. It's amazing to me. He's my favorite player on the planet. And so when it came time to sing, it was just this, that's one of my favorite songs musically. Funnel, the same thing. It was so beautiful. The solo on that he did. Roses Are Crying was one that we worked on with him, and Destiny. Yeah, all of those 4 were down there. And so they are definitely a more, you know, rock, not in a rock, like a hard rock sense, but in a rock, singer-songwriter, a little bit of a pop element, you know, thing that would never have been allowed for me to pull out at the label. Like, I just wouldn't have been in their wheelhouse. And but it fits because it's still me. So that was what was great, that even though 8 songs were done one place and 4 songs, somewhere else, we worked really hard to seamlessly that no one can tell which ones were from where
No, you
unless they
can't
read
tell.
the liner
No.
notes. Yeah, and you can't. And part of it too was we did like the music in Minneapolis first with bass drums and piano, and so that part was laid down. And Chris did some guitar, and then another guy, great friend Kevin Anderson, did a lot of the more soulful stuff. And both of them kind of know Grissom. Apparently he is like really very popular with guitar men. So people really respect him and have been influenced by him. So I think it helped bring everything to cohesion because they didn't want to. He inspired them to make stuff that would go along with the stuff that we did down in Texas. And I just musically, I'm really proud of the record. Even if I didn't sing on it, I just think musically and to have the say in it, like to be the guy in the chair, the woman in the chair saying, okay, more of that, less of this, no this. I mean, I had to even tell David no once, and trust me, before the surgery, I'd have been scared out of my mind to tell David Grissom no on anything. Like, that's David Grissom, just do what he says, right? And I was like, no, hey, this is how I need this song to be. He's like, okay. So I learned to have more bravery and then when it was done, he's just like, man, these songs are, he loves them. So I'm really happy that I got the Grissom thumbs up because I really respect him and his writing. But he said, you're way out of the box for me. And I was like, he said, but it works. He said, I've never seen anything like it in my writing. And he's written for tons of people, So I almost called the record Out of the Box because it's just like the repeat theme,
Yeah.
But I guess, I'd rather just be, I'm in my own box, which puts me out of the box, then that's okay. I can only be me. So I feel good about it.
Hey, I love the opening track, which of course is the title track as well. There's a real sense of joy in your voice, almost like you're announcing, I'm back. When sequencing the album, was that one always earmarked as the opener?
No, I think, but when I first wrote the song, My Voice, All the Way Back, it was Third Miracle. So if you were to hear the rough of me doing Songbirds and Angels, I have a hard time breathing. I couldn't get out the, I just want to be sitting at your, it was hard, but I could hear it. I could hear the melody, but it wasn't, my old voice was not all the way back. And so when we knew that was the one and we started to get the music down for it, and that definitely had a pop sense, which I just love. It just is such a happy song, and it was just right. It was the right kickoff song, and I love the title. It sort of says it all. Songbirds and Angels, so that it's musical, but there's there's a tip of the hat where the music came from. Again, without being preachy. And it was funny because I was at the house here, and Jason and I were listening to some guy who was speaking somewhere, and he's gone now. He died a few years ago, but he just said he was a very prophetic guy, and he said, he's from Arkansas, so he had this really, 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 really dark, strong accent, like out in the backwoods kind of a feller. And he said, when you get them songs, you songwriters, God sends a little songbird, and he sends it from heaven, and he sets it on your shoulder, and he sings it into your ear. And that's how you get that song. He said, the Lord showed that to me, that it was little songbirds from heaven. And Jason and I about fell out of the chair because we had written Songbirds and Angels before we heard that guy, him talking about that at this conference. We about fell out of the chair. We're like, that is so cool, because really, I know that he gives the songs. I just write them down, He's the creator. I just write them down. But it just was perfect. It just kind of said in a nutshell, I think it just encompassed the whole spirit of the album, music and joyfulness and gratefulness, which turned into grateful. And, just the miracle of, that's all I want to do. I just want to be sitting at your feet singing you a song. That was the epitome of getting my gift back. Just, even if he's my only audience, if him and Jesus, if Papa and Jesus and Holy Spirit and all the angels are my only audience, it's worth it. It was, I'm just so grateful to have it back. And, I never thought I'd speak again, much less, be able to have a new record. And it's such a big blessing, all of it,
It's just such an inspirational story. Renee, thank you so much for taking time to catch up with you again.
Oh, and I'm so sorry about the phone thing.
Oh, that's
I
okay.
feel so bad. I'm glad we connected, though, because I did not want, I was like, oh, my word, he's going to think I ditched him. So I'm so glad we were able to work it out.
It's fantastic to speak with you again, especially under these circumstances, too. It's just all exciting times ahead.
Thank you. If you would do me a favor, you're doing me a favor, by even playing the record. I appreciate it. But if you like it, it would really help to get a blurb or just something I can use for my marketing and PR.
For sure.
Yeah, we're getting, I've got some, but not as much as I hoped, because all the connections, from sort of the blues side have been either hot or very cold. Either they like it or they don't respond to me at all. Mm-hmm. So I'm not getting the marketing push, without, and two, I don't have a label, so I'm doing it by myself. But any bit of just a quote or something for the bio would be really appreciated. To have a shout out from down under would be great. And,
absolutely.
And I could add it to the bio. Thank you.
That
would mean a lot.
To do that. I'll get to work on that and email it to you.
Yeah, feel free to do a whole review of it if you want, or a quote, whatever you feel like. But I sure would appreciate something. Would be great.
Oh, consider it done. No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Renee.
And
take care.
We got to work on how to get me down there.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I want to sing in Australia. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start, but we sure want to go.
I'll see if I can send you some leads for that too. There's
well, it'd be great, because we can travel. We just bought a new band van. 15 passenger, big giant 350 engine Super Duty van.
Wow.
So we're, but I'm only going to go out like a couple of times a month, like 2 weekends a month as the shows come in. Cause now I'm a mama and he's in school. So we're doing the touring differently. We're not doing 3 weeks out, home a week, but we're willing and able to go anywhere. And so that means out of the country. Even my son, we got him his passport. So we just want to go where we're supposed to go. So any of that would be great. We'd love to hear some places we should pursue.
Be great to see you here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again, Renee.
Thank you. Bless you. Bless you and your family. And thanks for having me.
No, we'll stay in touch.
Good. I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
Okay. All the best.
Thanks,
bye-bye.
John.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye.